The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Adam Carolla, the actor, comedian, podcasting host, and best-selling author. Your career began some 30 years ago as a radio personality and co-host of the popular phone-in show Loveline, which then moved to television on MTV. In 2009, you launched the Adam Carolla Show, which quickly became the #1 podcast on iTunes and subsequently broke the Guinness World Record for the most downloaded of all time. You've starred in, produced, and directed many films, appeared on Celebrity Apprentice and Dancing with the Stars, and continue to be one of the most popular figures on the stand-up comedy circuit. As an author, you published 6 books, most notably In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks, which debuted on the New York Times bestseller list. Your latest book, Everything Reminds Me of Something, gives readers a glimpse of your unique perspective on the world as an antidote to the politically correct woke times in which we now live. Adam, welcome to London Real.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you here. I just want to say, we started back in 2011 and you were like the king of podcasting at the time. You were super inspirational to all the people that had never heard of podcasting over here in the UK. And I was just curious, like back then, did you see podcasting as this new tech of the future, or was it a way of just you having control of your own show, or was it just fun? I'm just kind of curious how that all started with you.
I didn't plot it out that precisely. I worked in radio. I got fired from my last radio job in 2009. The station flipped formats, the economy turned down, and I was just out of a job. And so I just went into podcasting, directly from radio. And there wasn't a business model attached to podcasting back in 2009. This is early, like February 2009. And, but I committed to do it every day, and I didn't get paid. And it cost me a lot of money in bandwidth back then, because I guess bandwidth cost more back then. And the show was popular, so it used up a lot of bandwidth. So I was paying probably about $9,000 or $10,000 a month in bandwidth, and there was no income. But I did it every day anyway. And I had some sort of, it wouldn't be a belief or faith. I just sort of had this sort of motivation. It felt like the right thing to do, I guess is how I would describe it. It didn't really feel like a business. It felt like maybe it could be a business, but it just felt like the right thing to do for me.
And do you remember when it became a business? Was it like 3 years or 4 years later?
No, it happened in sort of dribs and drabs. It first became apparent that we could use it as a tool to sell tickets to live events and appearances and things like that. So it became fairly immediately clear that, well, if you couldn't make money directly from podcasting, you could make money indirectly from it by saying, I was going to be down at this club or at this theater on this date, and the tickets would sell very quickly. Later, there became this Amazon affiliate program where people could click on some link on Amazon, and when they made an Amazon purchase, 1% of it would go toward you or something. So I guess the conceit was sort of like, you like this podcast, you get it for free, it cost us money. Why don't you just put us in your Amazon link and we'll get whatever, a 0.5% or whatever of whatever you spend on Amazon, or some version of that. Almost a little like a subscription, but it wasn't really a subscription. And started making like pretty good money just based on Amazon affiliate links. So now some money's starting to come in from Amazon links, some money's starting to come on from doing live events. And then at some point, some sponsors, kind of people you've never heard of, companies you've never heard of, started to kind of trickle in. And people started going, well, if he's got a big audience, what's the difference between a radio audience or a podcast audience? And then it turned out a lot of it was, I think a lot of the beginning of stuff was like affiliate stuff where they would say, flowers.com would come on during Valentine's Day and go, we'll give you $3 for every $25 bouquet you sell. And it was all super effective. We sold tons of bouquets and, and we got paid that way. And I guess it started to dawn on people that this not only could rival radio or television as far as advertising goes, but it could surpass it in terms of a more dedicated fan base, a more motivated fan base.
And now fast forward to today where, Spotify is in the business and places like Gimlet Media get scooped up for a couple $100 million. What do you make of it now compared to then?
Well, it's probably not unlike a lot of businesses in that it didn't exist and now it does exist. I don't find it astounding because that's all business is. Something doesn't exist and then I didn't grow up with a smartphone. Now every human being I know has a smartphone. So there's always, or an electric car, or some stuff's technology, some stuff's just, I never heard of Netflix when I was growing up, and now everyone has Netflix. Like, some of it is fashion, some of it's technology, some of it is the whims of society and the trends of society. But it's like, it's like no one had an iPhone. Now everyone has an iPhone. Nobody for the first 10 years of the iPhone had one of those weird little cases where you could keep your credit cards in the back of them. Now, everybody I know who has an iPhone has a weird little case where you can put your credit cards and driver's license behind it. And 5 years ago, nobody had one. Now everyone has one. So that's how business works. And this is, to me, just more of that.
Okay. And just to finish with podcasting, do you think it'll be around 100 years from now? And do you think it'll be the same? Do you think humans will always want to hear each other talk in that type of a format?
Yeah, thankfully, I think that humans crave an interaction, even if it's sort of a one-way street. I don't, concerts, let's really think about concerts or plays. Those have been going on for 2,000 years, different. Now the sound is amplified and there's a pyrotechnics display that goes along with it. And, Tommy Lee is in a shark cage spinning around with a drum kit. And I guess the ancient Romans could have never envisioned that. But if you take a look at concerts or plays or musicals or live spoken word events, it's not really changed. So I don't imagine this would change much either.
Okay. And like on that note you just said, do you think everything will get into the metaverse in 25 years from now, Adam, where we'll all just be doing it with our, Facebook Meta goggles or not?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the delivery system is going to change. For a while, when I started podcasting, the big talk was cars are going to be able to get the internet, like cars are going to have podcasts. And there was talk like in 2009, 2010, like, oh, BMW is going to come out with a 3 Series and you're going to be able to get the internet on it. And I guess at the time, no one figured out the phone part. They didn't figure out the part where you're going to get everything on your phone and then you're going to plug it in. This was back when a lot of cars had a CD changer in the back that held 6 CDs, and that kind of stuff. And so we won't always know. Like, I was wrong. Everyone around me was wrong. We were hoping podcasting could get into the cars via the stereo, not via the phone, but that kind of stuff's going to surprise us along the way. But I think the nuts and the bolts will remain.
Yeah, it feels like people will always want to listen to other people talking and other people performing, and whether it's live or VR or recorded. I guess it's probably not going anywhere. I wanted to ask you about the book because it's you answering real questions from real people, and you cover everything from cancel culture to Hollywood to wokeness to the economy to the president, I think. This book kind of just came to you, and again, I think you originally had a different title, Ask an Asshole, Advice and Answers from the Least Apologetic Man in Comedy, but I think your publishers convinced you differently. But yeah, tell me about the genesis of how this book happened.
When you write books, you write a book and I don't know, a year and a half goes by, and then your publisher says, do you want to write another book? And then I usually say yes. And then they go, what do you want to write it about? And then you think about it for a while. And the concept of answering questions, having a book of answers that people provided, it just seemed like a good fit because that's what I have done my whole life. I started off in radio that way, doing Loveline, where people would call in and ask advice, and then I'd give answers, and mostly oftentimes comedic answers, but I'd still give answers. And so it just became sort of natural that after writing 5 books where you sit down and write, that you do one where you answer questions. And it turned out to be an interesting experiment, because if you think about it, when you write a book, you usually just sit down and you go, what do I want to talk about? And that's kind of the process of writing a book. And then you start organizing it, well, I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that. Well, that would fit under the heading of politics or family or pop culture. You start shuffling things around and making chapters. This is kind of interesting in that I didn't sit around and go, what do I want to write about? Because people would ask me a question. And some of the questions I'd have to think, I've never thought about that. Like, I don't have thoughts about that. I need to force myself to form thoughts about stuff. So, imagine any author you enjoy and they write about politics or the Old West or World War II. And then you just start asking them questions about other stuff. And now that same person would have to go, I never thought about that, but here's my answer. And so it made it kind of interesting for me.
Nice. So you got some fresh angles, some fresh content, as opposed to if you had just come up with something, or your publisher, it would have been something you probably were familiar with.
Well, when you get to your 6th or 7th book and you start writing down stuff you want to talk about, I do it with a writing partner who's a stenographer, essentially, because I can't type. And I find myself saying to Mike Lynch, who's physically doing the writing, I start going off on some tangent, and then I would stop and I would go, did I say this in any of my other books? Because you lose track. And then he'll go, oh yeah, and not Taco Bell material. I think you did that jag in that book. And I go, oh, I did? Oh, all right. Well, that's off the table. Now I got to come up with something else, because these are all your thoughts and you're bound to repeat them. And by the time you get to, like I said, your sixth or seventh book, you've now written down, 2,000 pages of your thoughts. And, one only has so many thoughts. So this kind of is interesting because you don't run into that syndrome of like, did I already talk about this? Because I didn't talk about it because someone else has asked the question.
Right. That's fascinating. Tell me about a few things. First of all, how is California? I grew up there in San Diego until I was 18, and then I moved out. But I watch it now from afar, and sometimes it's hard to believe some of the things that happen there. You're still there, although it doesn't seem to jibe with the way you think about life. So what's it like, and how long are you going to stay?
Well, I was born and bred in Southern California. I wasn't really bred. I was just kind of born. My parents didn't do a lot of breeding. I have to figure that one out. And then I got out of high school. I got into construction. I just became a builder in my early part of my career. And I didn't really know you could move anywhere. California used to be, you just lived in California and everyone sort of came to you. You know what I mean? Like kind of an elitism. And I guess it'd be like, it's like you lived in Disneyland and somebody was like, you want to go down the street and go check out someone else's whatever? And you'd be like, no, I'm in Disneyland. People come here. I will wait for you in California. And then I got into show business. And, once I got into show business, then it was like, well, this is where show business is. So I stayed here and I slowly kind of watched it erode over the years. And, just high taxes and wildfires and badly managed and homeless situation and overregulated and, blah, blah, blah. And I started to kind of watch it come undone. But I also have 16-year-old twins who are in their junior year of high school. So I would never want to uproot them. So I kind of thought, well, I'll hang out here until they graduate high school and then probably start looking for a different place to live.
Okay. And how is the wokeness factor now in LA? Like, what does it feel like to be there and be around the people there?
It's like, it kind of depends. I mean, I was just on the set of a TV show for a day, and it's, big union, everything. And they're very COVIDed out on the set, and they're very paranoid. And so what it's essentially created two groups. It's basically a group of people that are very fanatical about COVID or woke culture or policy or whatever. So it's a smaller group. It's probably.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.